Hello, welcome back. This is Sudhakar Maparthi again. Today we're going to continue our journey of using ChatGPT to learn, and I'm going to use AWS IAM Service as an example and convert the text into JSON objects and discuss about it. And this is in preparation for compiling all this as a edited video. These series of videos that I'm recording will be edited and compressed and later provided as a short videos, and that way one can learn these whatever we are doing right now in much more shorter period of time. Okay, let's get started. So basically, I'm teaching the machine. So this is the technique that I'm going to use. Share. All right. So I'm going to take AWS documentation here. So what I want to do is I want to just take each paragraph, okay, without reading anything, and I'm going to just convert that into a ChatGPT JSON object. Create JSON, and I'll just copy paste. So we're going to talk about Identity Access Management Service. This is one of the AWS services. Its purpose is to help securely control access to AWS resources. So basically, who should have access to AWS resources? A resource is. So we'll talk about what are AWS resources as we copy paste these paragraphs. More and more entities and properties will come, and these I would consider them as entities, or you can, in JSON they call it as properties. But for my purpose here, I have a class called purpose, and there are lots and lots of objects, and this particular value is one object. Okay, so here, this AWS service has this purpose and these features. Centralized management of permissions, control access to AWS resources, authentication, authorization of users to use resources. So when you read something like this, you want to understand what is authentication, what is the authorization, what is the difference between those two, and everything that you see, you should have a clear, unambiguous understanding of what they mean by that. So sometimes they talk at a very high level. So that is why I start with high level abstract things. And whatever you can remember, you should remember. And eventually, when you actually practice and put it, it will come, it will be clear, and then you will remember. Okay. So again, okay, let's go back to our documentation. So it has a purpose to control the access. Then I'm going to just copy this. Again, I'm going to say create JSON. Oops. I didn't read that text, so I'm just going to only try to identify the relationships, what the JSON is showing me. So here I will have a root user. That means when you have a AWS account, you should have a root user. That is what your identity. Sign in identity with complete access. So that means you have all the access. And so your email address and password you will use. Recommendation: do not use the root user for everyday tasks. Safeguard root user credentials and use them to perform tasks that only the root user can perform. There are some references. Okay, so basically what all it is saying is you should have a root user to get into your account, and you should only use this if you cannot use a regular user. So there is a root user, and I can create a whole bunch of users. So we will also see that. That's all it is saying. I'm going to move very, very quickly here. Later, I will compile these into a document and then make it available. So there is a video introduction by AWS, so you can enroll in that and then do that. So let's go and see what are the IAM features. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy all this. I don't want to read that. Okay, I want to check ChatGPT's smartness. My paste. Oops, I didn't say anything. Okay, it understood. Here is a JSON because it understood I want to build JSONs. That's pretty good. So IAM features are shared feature, granular permissions, secure access to AWS resources, ability to grant other people permission to administer and use resources in your AWS account without having to share your password or access key. Granular permissions, ability to grant different permissions to different people for different resources. Secure access to AWS resources, ability to securely provide credential for application that run easy to install, providing permissions for the application to access other resources such as S3 and buckets and DynamoDB tables. Okay, so whatever I'm reading here, it's not that important because I mean, you can understand whatever to the extent that you can understand. There may be some terms in these paragraphs that may not be clear when you are reading for the first time. But all you need to know is okay, there are some features and shared access. So that means I can share my resources with somebody. Granular permissions, that means I can control at a very, very fine granular level. Secure access to AWS. It's a secure access, so the word secure is important here, I guess. So that's all, identity access management, IAM. So you're just trying to control whatever you deploy in your AWS cloud. Okay, so let's go back and see some more features. I'm just copying a little bit at a time. Okay, I'm going to copy the entire thing. So IAM feature, multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is the second level of access. After you enter login using your user ID password, then a text message with a second level of protection. Only you have access. Identity federation, identity information for assurance, PCI DCSS compliance, integrated with many AWS services, eventually consistent, free to use. Okay, so lots and lots of terms. When you first encounter this, when you start using IAM service or start understanding, it's very difficult to remember all these things. So I will not worry too much at this point of time. All I want to do is, okay, I want to highlight this multi-factor authentication, identity federation. You can read ability to allow users who already have passwords elsewhere to get temporary access to your AWS account. Okay. So we're going to elaborate these things. What this means is in terms of other properties. Okay, that will make that thing very, very clear. So right now, I will not worry too much at this point of time. So this is a technique I'm showing you how you should be learning. Okay. So tell me if I'm wrong or right eventually when I finish this entire thing in the next couple of videos. All right, let me continue with this. Okay, let's see. Oh, what did I copy? I think it's repeating something. Let's see. Accessing IAM. Hmm. I should have also copied the accessing IAM. Okay, anyway. Okay, it built. Okay, let me just do this one more time. I'm going to copy accessing IAM. I really want only this much. How? So basically, it is going to tell us how we can access IAM service in different ways. Command line, programmatically, command line, and let me say create a JSON. Okay. Accessing IAM methods. Okay, so this makes sense. So these are different ways to access accessing IAM methods. AWS Management Console. So that means you can log in into the console, going to a web browser like here, sign in into the console. And command line tools. So you can go to command prompt and use command line commands. And then AWS SDKs, software development kits. So these are the kits available to integrate in your application, these SDKs, so that you can directly provision resources, remove, and do programmatically. So that is manually. This is through the console manually. This is the command line manually, and this is programmatically. IAM HTTPS. Using those SDKs, you can programmatically access. So basically, it's all saying is you can access these various different ways. I'm not going to worry about too much what this is all noise. Okay. It's not a lot of substance here. Okay. So they just throw these words and paragraphs just to make it complete. But we can just ignore for now. All you need to do is know is, okay, there are 4 different ways I can access console, command line. Using SDKs, I can programmatically access. Okay, so that's all for how what is IAM. Okay, so this whole page, because I'm explaining and copy pasting and constructing, it is taking time. But otherwise, once I edit this and then have these objects nicely presented, then it would be much faster. Okay, how IAM works. Okay, there are lots of terms. It's scary if you are looking at this diagram for the first time to understand all this. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about this again. As I said, it should be self-evident as we are reading. Whatever the brain can absorb, it will absorb, and uh, and then we just need to make more and more connections. Okay, so here, if you see this diagram, they just said principal, authorization, request, identity-based policies, resource-based policies. And what is the difference between those? It's a lot of words. They're just throwing at you. So, but it's good to diagram. I'm not saying it is anything bad to try to understand, but let's go here and then see what it will show us here. IAM resources. Okay, so let's take this. I want to build small objects and then talk about it. Okay, so we got these resources, um, IAM resources, users, you have groups, you have roles, you have policies, and you have identity providers. So these are the different types of resources inside in IAM service. And we can elaborate more about user, more about the connections between users and groups. So now I'm going to give my uh, diagram like yesterday, the way we did it. So this will give you a good understanding. These are users. Okay, these are groups. These are policies, and these are identity providers. So I may have different kind of identity providers. You don't need to know what is identity provider at this point. All you need to know is, okay, there is something. If you understand, that's good. But because it's a very complex object, again, we need to describe this object in terms of other things. So we are dealing at a high level abstraction. So there are users. So we kind of know what are users. And so if I put a bunch of users in a group, then I get, so I can say this user is in this group. This user is also in this group. This is one group, and this is another group, let's say. And so now I can just put a bunch of users into a group, and I can attach a policy to a user. So a policy. The policy is another, again, a P1, let's say, and then there is another policy. A policy is a bunch of permissions put together, and so this user has all the permissions that are grouped under a policy. How policy is implemented, what is the structure of a policy, how I can define that. Again, we need to define that, but at this point, just say I can attach a user to a policy. I can attach a group. I can put a user into a group. Why? It's a convenience thing. So if I have to attach each user to each policy, sometimes it is cumbersome. So what I do is I create a group and I attach a policy to that group, and then I just put that user in this group. And so because of uh, group association, so automatically you will get this. So at the end of the day, there are a whole bunch of permissions. So this policy has a whole bunch of permissions, that what I can do, what can I cannot do, and those are the permissions, granular level, that you are trying to get to this user or to this group. So that's a policy, is an intermediate, you know, uh, efficient way to do these things. Okay, so now you see, basically what I want to remember is these are the four things mainly. These are the things that I am interested in. Okay. IAM identities. There may be small, subtle differences in all these things. And that is where the problem is when you are reading for the first time. Okay. So it's kind of summarized the above stuff, and that's nice. Okay, I like that. You see, identity access management, these are different features, and these are the ways to access, and these are some resources of IAM, and there are identities. So identity is basically who you are, right? um, which group you belong to, and who are you, and what role are you playing. Those are the different identities you can take and then perform actions on the resources of AWS. I like this JSON, summarized JSON. Okay, let's go back. IAM entities. Okay, so just to stick with our idea of creating these JSONs, so there is a better way to do. I believe once basic JSONs are created, we may have to edit a little bit so that it will be easy. It will be consolidated. But today I'm just going to. This is a working session. You can think of it as. Beautiful. You see, I mean, you go and read this whole thing. I mean, they are saying all kinds of things. But when I look at this, it's pretty clear. Okay, I got some identities. I got in that identities users one type of identity, and these are different users, administrators, developers, operators, consumers. And then you have groups, that's another identity array. Roles, I can define different roles. Entities, again, users and roles. Principals are human users, administrators, developers, operators, consumers. So whoever is accessing the AWS resources, they're also called principal. Uh, Federated users, assumed roles, workload. So sometimes other applications can access AWS resources. So it's not just humans going through the console command line, but when you program it through the applications, you can also access these resources. Okay, so we will elaborate all these things, at a later time. So let's continue. Let's see what is the principle. Okay, so you see, as I said, we just want to get the terms. And let's create JSON just for this. Principle. A person or application that uses the AWS account, root user, IAM user, human users, workloads, credentials, IAM user, root user, temporary roles. Best practice, require human users and workloads to access AWS resources using temporary credentials. Beautiful. So it's understanding what I want, and it gave me a lot more than what I told. But that's all in essence. Different types, humans and workloads. Workload is basically a group of some resources uh, put together with code and then executed just like a human. So it's automated things. IAM users credentials permanent. Root user IAM users are permanent. Temporary credentials. Sometimes you want to give somebody access to your resources, so you can assign a role and then make them access that um, temporarily, and then it will be gone. It will expire. So whereas these won't expire once it is created until you delete these resources, these users, and then only they will disappear from IAM service. Best practice, require human users and workloads to access AWS resources using temporary credits. Okay. All right. Let's move. Let's go back. So let's say request. When a principal actions or operation, I don't want to read. I want to always get to the thing. And we're going to conclude after this page. Okay. Let's go and read this. Okay. So let's see if we can make sense. So we have some request. So these are the type of actions that one can perform. Action in AWS Management Console, perform operation CLI or AWS API. These are all the requests. And resource objects, principal, you have entity, associated policies, policy 1, policy 2, policy 3. So we have a principal and an entity and associated policies. So as I said, the policies is nothing but a bunch of granular level permissions grouped, and then policies attached to the user. I would say at this point, the takeaway from all this exercise is you got users, you got groups, you got policies, users, groups, policies. Okay, this is the main thing that you need to know at the first level of understanding. Users can be put in groups. Groups can have policies, and policies can all users can be attached to policies, or you can get the policy implemented through the group mechanism as well. So at the end of the day, there is a user or uh, or other identities, applications also can have these access to these policies, and then these applications can be put in these groups. I'm assuming at this point of time, we'll confirm later, but as I could see, these are the four entities, the other identities, applications. Let's put it as applications for now. We can change these names. Okay. All right. Okay. Next video, we will continue with authentication, authorization, actions, operations, and we'll continue with those in the next session. Okay, that's all I want to talk to you guys today. All right. So please get in touch with me, subscribe, and we will do together how we can learn these things very quickly. My goal is to make everybody get a high level understanding, and then for developers go into low level and do programmatically with using scripts and manually through the web console. So those practice we will be doing once this theoretical understanding is accomplished. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Take it easy. Bye.